Hello and welcome to In the Court of the Wenton King. Join us on our journey through Zappadom. Today we've got a real curiosity. It's the kind of thing that just wouldn't get mentioned unless you went through the whole catalogue. Francesco Zappa, a real old one. Certainly not an album you would start with unless you were collecting the whole lot, but certainly a curiosity and certainly interesting. The background of this basically is that Gale found in a list of composers a genuine 18th century composer called Francesco Zappa, who had written some stuff. He was also a cellist, I think, so he'd written a whole load of stuff. So he got some of it and got David Ocker, who was the synclavier guy, to type them all in over the period of a month. It took a month to type them in because the synclavier was so, by today's standards, so user unfriendly. They got the scores from Berkeley, so Berkeley has stores of obscure composers, because this is an obscure guy. This is something really quite obscure. And it's all a load of stuff written for two violins and bass, as in upright bass. So consequently, of course, this is not Frank Zappa's work. It's not his compositions. It's an interesting thing. Don't expect a Frank Zappa album in that sense. It is some nice chamber music, but obviously done on the synclavier, so it has a sort of 80s synth sound to it. So obviously it's an acquired taste. The experience of listening to it is a different experience to listening to a Zappa album. In that it's something you would have on in the background. It's some nice chamber music you'd have on in the background, not something you would sit and really listen closely to. But that's okay, there's nothing wrong with that. I did wonder for a while whether Francesco Zappa was a real person or whether this was Frank just wanting to write some chamber music and created a namesake, Sgt. Pepper style. But I don't think so. I think it does appear that he's actually real. This was a real composer and cellist. What's interesting is that Frank thought using these traditional instruments would be a bit boring. So, trying some different things with the patches on the synclavier, he thought made it more interesting, and in that sense that's true, although a lot of it would have benefited from an actual live performance, but would have been prohibitively expensive for an obscure album. We've got Opus I and we've got Opus IV on this album. They're all quite short tracks, 17 altogether. The first one is number 1, first movement, Andante. Andante means slowish, so it doesn't start fast. The first thing you think when you hear it, particularly at the time I'm recording this, by the time you see this it's going to be a few weeks later, but it is Christmas and the music sounds like Christmas. I bought this about 2 months ago and it sounded like Christmas then. That's not necessarily a bad thing though. It has a nice ascending melody actually, so it's pretty good. And there's enough there to keep listening, I think. When you put it on, first couple of notes you think, oh, going to sound like this. But it keeps you going. There's enough nice melody there to keep you interested. It's nice stuff. Track 2 is second movement, Allegro con brio. Allegro means fastish. This one's a bit more irritating though, it's not as good as the first track. Track 3 though, which is number 2, first movement, Andantino. Andantino meaning slower than Andante. Bit more bass, so that's good. It's still Christmas, but that's okay, it's fine. At this point you realise the whole album is Christmas. It's good actually, there's nice variation to the melody. It's really quite nice to listen to. Track 4 is second movement, Minuetto grazioso. Grazioso means graceful. And it's charming and slow. It's quite a nice one. Track 5, number 3, first movement, Andantino. Another slightly irritating track, but there's some nice arpeggios going, stuff going on, so that's quite nice. Track 6, the second movement, Presto. Presto meaning actually fast. Very Christmas, this one. Really would have benefited from a live performance because there's some really nice bits in this which would have been, players could really express themselves with, so that's a shame, but still good. Then we go on to number 4, first movement, Andante. What's interesting about this one, it almost, this is where I have my doubts because it almost sounds like the kind of thing you would have written on computer. The bass part is duplets, it's do 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 do. And if you're writing on computer, that's the kind of bass part you write. I think the first computer music I wrote did that. So that's why I was suspicious. I'm convinced I'm not right about that though. Track 8, which is the second movement of number 4, Allegro. It's kind of like a heavier version of what we've just heard. So dun 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 dun. And good, great, like that one. Then we've got number 5, second movement. So we don't get the first movement of number 5, Minuetto grazioso. It's a bit forgettable, particularly after the previous track, which had a bit more bombast to it. So it's okay. Then we start into number 6, the first movement, Largo. Largo means slow and dignified, apparently. Haven't heard that one before. But there's really nice melody on this one, a nice use of tempo. Sort of slower melody over a fast bass part, and then it sort of speeds up and slows down here, so that's pretty cool. Straight on to number 6. Then we've got the second movement of number 6, which is Minuet. Minuet means slow, but this seems to be lots of fast playing over a slow tempo, so it's really lots of fast run. It's quite nice. Very Bach. One of the best bits on the album, I think. And then with track 12 we're on to Opus 4 now, so we're on to a separate set of pieces. Number 1, first movement, Andantino. bit boring though, really. Yeah. Track 13, however, the second movement, Allegro assai, which means quite fast, so not quite as fast as Allegro. Heavy. It's a heavy version, Bach kind of stuff. Quite a bit better. It's all very light though, but relatively speaking to this album, it's a heavy track. Then track 14, number 2, the second movement, number 2, we didn't get the first movement, Allegro assai again. We've switched to the harpsichord. Thanks, Frank, for doing that, because it sounds much nicer on harpsichord, and it sounds much more authentic, the harpsichord patch, than the sort of beepy synclavier sound, so that's cool. Great gothic stuff, bit Bach-y again. It's like computer game music. Great, can't go wrong with that. Then we're on to number 3, first movement, Andante again. It's like a march, it's okay. Second movement of that, Tempo di Minuetto. Lots of fast runs, basically, which is great. Great way to come to the end of the album. But then you've got track 17, which is the number 4 first movement, Minuetto again. This one's got a silly patch, like a Moog. A pew 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 sound. But it's a good melody, so it's okay. I think he should have finished on track 16, to be honest, but there you go. Good stuff. An interesting one, real curiosity. See you next time.